According to the Bhagavad Gita, realizing the authentic self or soul involves understanding its true nature and detaching from what is not the self. The authentic self, referred to as the Atman or self, is described as eternal, unborn, undying, permanent, and primeval. It never ceases to be and is not slain when the body is slain. The self is immutable, all-pervading, unchanging, and cannot be burnt, wetted, or withered. It is the real that is always the same through past, present, and future, unlike the unreal, which is temporary. Even as a person casts off worn-out clothes and puts on new ones, the embodied self casts off worn-out bodies and enters others that are new. The cause of Arjuna's grief is identified as a lack of discrimination between the body and the soul. The sources emphasize that the body is perishable, while the self is imperishable. Delusion based on ego and attachment is the cause of samsara, the incessant round of birth and death. When the mind has crossed the slough of delusion, one achieves indifference regarding things already heard and things yet to be heard. To be the authentic self, one needs to gain self-knowledge and discriminate between the real and the unreal. This involves recognizing that the self is distinct from the senses, mind, and intellect. Attachment to the senses and their objects leads to bondage and suffering. One must learn to withdraw the senses from their objects, like a tortoise drawing in its limbs. The Bhagavad Gita outlines several paths to realize the authentic self. The path of knowledge, Jnana Yoga. This path emphasizes understanding the true nature of the self through discrimination and renunciation of the unreal. It involves seeing the self as the absolute reality, Brahman, which is one and the same in all beings. Knowledge destroys ignorance and reveals the supreme. A man endowed with self-knowledge is free from the illusory notions of a doer, an instrument, and a result of action. The path of action, Karma Yoga. This path advocates performing one's allotted duty, dharma, without attachment to the results. By acting without selfish motives and surrendering the fruits of action, one purifies the mind and progresses towards self-realization. Action performed without attachment or care for the result does not create new karma, but leaves the will free for self-realization. The path of devotion, Bhakti Yoga. While not explicitly detailed in these excerpts regarding the authentic self, the text mentions the importance of devotion to the Lord. Surrendering to the divine and fixing the mind on the Lord is a means to attain liberation and realize one's true relationship with the Supreme. The path of meditation, Jnana Yoga. This path involves concentrating the mind, subduing desires and passions, and restraining the activities of the mind and senses to realize the self. A yogi with a well-controlled mind rests in the self alone, free from longing for objects. Ultimately, being the authentic self involves transcending the limitations of the ego, body, and senses through knowledge, selfless action, devotion, and meditation to realize the eternal, blissful, and unchanging nature of the Atman, which is one with the supreme reality, Brahman. Thank you for watching.